I guess talking about resolution online. I guess what kind of have you ever had a fight online, Mikey?
I kind of sometimes have a bit of a fight. Actually, you can turn this down a little bit. I think number two, yeah. Sometimes, hang on. There we go. Yes.
Yeah?
Not normally about loud music. Normally the fight is about Israel Palestine. Normally with my family, yeah, because there's a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are very supportive of Israel, and I'm probably not as supportive.
Yeah.
So sometimes I make some comments about solidarity with the Palestinians, which my family don't like.
So how do you feel like you're able to have productive conversations with them? Are they emotional? Like what are the kind of conversations?
Yeah, well,
arguments you have.
I mean, bear in mind that I've been doing this like 28 years since I was in shorts.
And still are.
Still am in shorts.
Still are in shorts.
I kind of have got the gist about how to have a more productive version of that conversation, because I've got a lot of experience about how to actually, de-escalate the conversation, how to see points from the other side, how to also put across, I think, my opinion in a more neutral, kind of acceptable way. Maybe be a bit less accusatory to the other people. So I probably would say I'm quite good at resolving fights online, because that's part of my job.
But are you having fights with your family online, or are you having fights with strangers? I'm curious to see, are they the different kind of people you're fighting?
No, it just tends to be fun, because other people, I think the way I put my views is in such a kind of, it's almost like a politician, but worse than that, like a diplomat. I put my views in a very neutral, mild manner. So I don't really ever get much comeback online.
Not much comeback online?
No. What about you? Have you...
I've never been trolled online, and I don't think I've ever actually trolled anyone online either.
Yeah.
That's not to say...
Have you ever witnessed any of that kind of thing happening?
Oh, I think it's quite natural to kind of... I think it's quite a lot of entertainment for people, is to seek out people being trolled, maybe.
Yeah.
You might see a video and then you go... I think you always look to the comments, and the comments section is also where...
I mean,
I'm kind of curious about... Okay, carry on, Mikey.
No, I was going to say, it kind of reminds me of the time we had the Princess of Wales on the Talkaoke table, and the Daily Mail came to cover it.
Yes.
And there was a big hoo-ha, and I mean, it was, we didn't make a big deal out of it, because we're the people speak. We're supposed to be Republicans, you know what I mean? But I was quite happy to be in the news and everything. But and I thought all the comments were going to be, who's that guy in the middle of that glowing table? What is this for? Or even like, that's great that the Princess of Wales is visiting a youth centre in Tower Hamlets. But there were about 12,000 comments, and 99.9% of them were about, oh, the princess has really let herself go. I can't believe she needs to fire her hairdresser, or that hairstyle really doesn't work. What is she doing wearing fawn? Or something like... And it was just like comment after comment after comment in this vein about the Princess of Wales' appearance. And there was not a I mean, I didn't troll through all 12,000 of them, but after about 5 or 6 or 7 pages, I was like, kind of gave up looking for that comment. And it's like, who's that guy in the middle of that glowing table? Because it just wasn't there. It wasn't going to happen. So, yeah, I do understand the online abuse kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Why do you think... do you think it's easier for people to be negative rather than positive online, or do you think there's something else going on?
I tell you what, I've got a theory about it. My feeling is that social media companies, as they are targeted towards maximum attention. And what that tension often means is emotional arousal. And what emotional arousal often means is winding people up. So social media companies, instead of promoting consensus and more let's say, consensual comments, they tend to promote the more extreme comments in order to get a bigger audience.
Okay, so maybe some attention farming. We've got a new face at the table. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Lindsay. No, I completely agree. Social media companies will prioritize things that trigger emotional arousal because that's ultimately what gets the most engagement and helps them get the most profit. And I've actually been doing lots of research, and I read that Facebook's actually been doing lots of reviews. They've been trying to see, like, okay, well, how can we make things better? Like, oh, we're seeing that we're a platform where a lot of our community pages are actually radicalizing people, and people are exposed to misinformation. Maybe we should do something about that. And then they'll realize, oh, but if we did something about that, then we'd get less engagement and less numbers, and we can't have that.
Oh, there's a sad reaction to Lindsay. Maybe perhaps an emotional reaction to Lindsay comment. She's off. She might be back. If you're at the bar, you're wondering what we're doing. This is Talkaoke by The People Speak. Come and grab a seat. Come and join in. Tell us, have you ever been trolled? Have you ever trolled anyone else? Come and tell us. If you're at the bar, come and whisper it, and then go back to the bar. We've got loads of spaces, but so we kind of been talking about emotional manipulation, emotional tension online.
Is it fair on trolls, though, to use that word? You know, I mean, I don't know. Is it a bit anti-troll, the use of the term troll as a negative comment? Because, you know, there are trolls out there, and maybe they're just actually kinder than the online trolls.
Come and grab a seat, guys. We're talking about trolling online. Come and join us.
Give us a final thought before you go.
Give us a final thought for the table. Anything you want.
Peace and love.
Peace and love. Not something we find a lot online. Thank you very much. If you're sort of at the back of the bar as well and you're curious about what it is, come and grab it. Come and grab a seat. Come and join us. We've been talking about trolling online. We've been talking about maybe going to the comment section, and it's actually going to the comment section actually slightly entertaining. My name's Evie. This is Mikey, and we've got
Jack.
Hello. Jack, what
Nice
are
to
your
meet you,
thoughts
Mikey.
on
Evie.
online trolling? The use of the word troll.
Well, it's funny. I've got quite a funny perspective on it because I'm part of a comedy group from Newcastle, and we release sketches online, and we do a live show and stuff. Boing, and we released a line of sketches that were through like a Ring doorbell camera. And they were just a thing to have little character pieces where we go up to the camera and improv, and it was sort of, and we had so many. I was so surprised at how many people thought it was real, or that we were trying to forge it being real when it was so obviously a sketch. And we also had visual receipts, like instead of ring in the corner, we had rang, which is like, you know, I rang you, which was always just a Geordie thing. So we had all these things that were kind of, but people took it so offensively. And it also just stirred up a lot of stuff. And have you heard about the sycamore tree that got cut down? So we did a sketch of like a guy. We went to the site after the tree got cut down, which was very weird. But we did a sketch of a guy who was like he has like a high vis on, and he says to camera, he's looking at the tree, and he's like, "This is our 9/11." And it's and it unleashed this world online of just saying 9/11 in the sketch, even though it was completely like, you know, irrelevant to the realness. It was more making a point on how the North reacted to the tree and X, Y, and it was, you know, we thought it was quite profound, if anything. But it just opened up this world of, I guess, trolls, and also it was very shocking me how easily people are led online, or how much they believe. How susceptible are to just believing anything that they see in front of them, and what's read was quite scary, and it wasn't funny anymore because we weren't trying to dupe anyone. We're just trying to do funny stuff, but people see something and they take it so seriously, or they take it so intently.
And does that make you think? I'll go to Mikey, but does that make you think a bit more about your like the responsibility that you have when you put stuff out online? Or?
Yeah, definitely. Like, well, what's good is that we're all very like. We're all well-intentioned in our purpose, and we all kind of we all do it because there's 5 of us essentially, and we all just kind of have a shared sense of humor, which we don't believe is tied to any politics, or is kind of like pointing any fingers, or is generally very nasty. It's kind of like silly and humorous for the sake of being humorous, and we all loved Vic and Bob and Monty Python and Smack the Pony and that kind of stuff. So when we started making that was always the intention. But putting it online was very, very different. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, we've got Mikey. You've got some thoughts, maybe on.
Well,
the
first of all, just
responsibility-
what's the name of this comedy group? Because you might have said it, but it just went over my head. Maybe it's the accent. But also, I mean, I've had similar experiences, but not with like kind of levels of hatred, but just people normally misunderstanding what was obviously a gag. Like we were doing this thing where we were trying to get kids to think of fake news, and it was based in Newham. And we did this thing where we did this vox pops of people saying, oh yeah, Newham's a really great place. The only thing is the bin's a bit full. And then the next news story was kind of exaggerating that until we had like Fox News saying, the UK is under a mountain of rubbish. And then like some of the kids got it, but some of the kids were like, oh, that's really good that we're being informed about this. And the whole point was that they were supposed to easily see, because it was the area they lived in, that it wasn't true, but they just, because it was a news story, they just immediately took it for truth.
So do we think? I mean, have you guys had the same experience? Perhaps have you seen things online that you've immediately taken for truth, that you feel like you've been hoodwinked into, or do you feel like you're quite savvy when you're online? You know what's true and what's not out there.
I felt like I was quite savvy until AI came about. In all honesty, I think I was quite good at, and then I really got into my fact checkers, and that was good too. But then, no, I've definitely more recently. So I think I saw a video of a cruise liner, and it looked like it was dumping loads of sewage and poo into the ocean, and it was like, what? That's awful. That's what DFDS. And then I realised that it was just AI and it was completely made up. And I was really sort of like in that moment. Yeah, it got us. I had to search. I had to go to an outside source to try and find whether this video was real or not. But before then, yeah, not so much. I felt like I was quite savvy. To be fair, to go off what you said earlier, mate, of that the thing with like fake news. We'd done we did a sketch for a satire news blog where it was sort of not long after COVID, and we did a sketch about a TV license inspector who moonlights as a COVID marshal. So that was his way to get into the house, would be, oh, I heard there's been a party or something going on here, or like, I just need to come around and have a little check about, see if anything's like, and then he'd get in there and he'd be like, oh, that's a nice TV, mate, how long have you been having that? And then it'd go on from there. And there was so many people who were like, oh, if a TV license goes in my house, he's getting shot. Like, it was such an aggressive response to something that was like, we were, and we realized that the video hit an algorithm of people who'd been typing in, TV license inspector gets punched, or TV license inspector gets owned, and then our sketch had landed in that, and that was that was jarring. But sorry, that kind of went back off the point that we started before. But this is great, by the way.
Fantastic.
This is great, by the way.
I think I need to PSA that there is an Act 1 starting in the depot at the moment, so just down the stairs, but Talkaoke is running as other people arrive. So we're going to keep going, so you can go down if you want to go and see that part of the show, but if not, we're still here running Talkaoke.
I'm just going to finish this, but I'll chat to you until I finish.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I feel like maybe is it good to, do we have some kind of self-knowledge of what are the kind of things that you kind of get irrationally angry at? Or
oh, right, yeah.
I mean, what are they, or maybe
cheers,
when, I don't know, we need to sort of take a temperature around the table. But do you get irrationally angry about things online yourself? Where you find yourself kind of getting caught up in that engagement? I'll give this one over.
I more get angry on the roads, of course. And it's just weird because I'm not generally an angry person, but when it comes to just being on, especially around here, getting stuck on Holloway roads, and it just inches, and then somebody falls asleep behind the wheel or something. I don't know what it is. I'm not saying it's right, but that is my probably more than online. I don't tend to get that angry online.
Do you think being online or being in a car, are they in any way similar kind of environments? Pass.
Well, I mean, sometimes these days people are online when they're in their cars as well, and that's part of the reason why there's a little bit of, sometimes they can be distracted. I mean, I do think people are a bit too on. I was actually last night watching a video about how addictive phones are and how they're sort of like, and I think that I'm using the right word, dementing the social fabric. And actually, just by accident, I left my phone in the studio today, so I haven't got my phone with me. So if you've tried to call me, that's why I didn't answer. Don't take offence. But it's so weird now, like just to be without a phone. It's like, oh, I feel something's missing. So we are, I think, a little bit more addicted to being online. I don't generally get angry online, but I do get very addicted.
Okay, so that's maybe your destructive kind of relationship online. Things you get irrationally angry about, or kind of relationship with your phone and being online or not being online?
I did get irrationally angry when I started seeing those apps that change your appearance, I guess, or change your looks. I would see it as a sponsored post where it'd be like, always wondered why your best friend's selfies look better than yours. And I was like, what a horrible thing to kind of, whatever. It was just such an odd, and then it was like, here with the Facetune app, you can make your nose smaller and you can do this and that. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the motivation for that, and what's the kind of, what's that doing to a young mind? I was older to think, like, well, that's bullshit. I could look at that and go, well, that's bullshit. Can you swear on this? But yeah.
You do everything and we'll talk. Apart from sing, you're not allowed to sing. No fighting, no singing.
Fair. That's a good rule. Rule. No fighting, no singing. Yeah, so I guess I got quite irrationally angry at that when I started seeing them coming about. That felt like the start of like, oh God, this is going to go down. Really not caring about your perception and how you're seen online, but at the same time, not care. I don't know. It was that made me quite angry. I'm trying to think of stuff that makes me angry outside of online stuff, but to be quite recently, it's so funny that you're talking about social media, because I was just on a job today, and that was the conversation on set with a lot of people was like social media and just sort of it's ultimately dividing a lot of people, I think, more than bringing them together. Danny Dyer said a good thing about it, where he spoke on that show called The Assembly, which is on ITV, which is like they get all these different people with like learning disabilities to ask questions, and they spoke to him about that in social media and what he thinks of it, and he just thinks it's just splitting people, it's dividing people more than social. It's not social at all.
It's dividing people more than it's creating connections.
I just think it's like, I think in the future we're going to look back and just say how irresponsible were those social media companies, because they've got a responsibility to actually create a space. It's almost like, say, instead of Talkaoke here, we started having a boxing match, or trying to wind people up and start, and that was the entertainment. People would be like, you can't do that. You can't just start winding people up and starting a fight in every pub. But somehow it's acceptable online, and if that happened in a pub, then the owner would be like held to account. Why are you starting fights in this pub? What's going on here? But it seems to be that they get away with it online. They've got a responsibility actually to do the opposite, to actually help people. They've got great opportunity to actually help people listen to each other, understand each other's points of view, and really get a much wider perspective, but they do the opposite. So I think we'll look back and go, how did they get away with it? It's a bit like, in Mad Men, I don't know if you ever watched that, when they have a picnic and then they just get up and they just like pull the blanket away and leave all the rubbish on the... I think we'll look at it like that. We'll just go, how did they just run their social media so irresponsibly?
Social media, sort of the digital equivalent of litter picking. Come and join us. We're discussing social media. We've been discussing misinformation. We're talking about divides. You're not into social media, or not into what are you not into?
Have you ever had a fight in a pub?
Yeah, have you ever had a fight? Yeah, or fight full stop.
In pubs. Okay.
What's the kind of cause of your fights in pubs? What's the cause of them? Drink. And who are you fighting?
you normally don't know them. Just someone who wants to reciprocate.
Someone who
That's
wants to
right.
reciprocate. Oh, wait. There is a doctor here. Hello. Perfect. We're just doing Talkaoke for people at the bar for the stragglers. Perfect. Okay, so we've been. I'm sorry. Remind us of your name.
My name's Ron.
Ron.
Jack.
Jack.
Mikey.
I'm Evie. This is Talkaoke. It's a pop-up talk show where you guys are the VIPs, and we've been discussing kind of what makes people angry online, what makes people angry in real life, why people fight.
Well, I was just watching. I don't know how. Sometimes you online, you get into a particular sort of thing, and you start watching it. I've been watching on YouTube, Tales of the Unexpected, and
Yes.
it's so dated now, but it's just so good to watch because it's just a totally different world. It's from the 80s. Everyone's like smoking all the time in a bar like this. Actually, when I started doing Talkaoke, everyone would just smoke on a Talkaoke table. And just things have moved on. So I just feel like, just going back on the sort of like anachronistic thing, I think social media will move on as well.
And we'll look at it as this kind of sort of slightly dated, demented thing that you said earlier. We've got a new face at the table. What's your name?
Helena.
Helena. Brilliant. Okay, we've got Helena, we've got Jack, we've got Ron, we've got Mikey. We've got a lovely bar staff as well in the corner as well. Come and join us if you have a chance, if you're not busy, but you're doing probably the most important job in the building so far. But yeah, so we're talking about aggression. We're talking about how will we think about social media in 50 years' time? Where are we going to take this? What do you have any ideas about how you want to kind of tackle social media? Is there anything we can do? Can we just give it up? What do people think?
Thank you, Evie. Oh, right. Well, something that I think that social media might take the direction of is to potentially start like rating people. You know, so like, for example, she has a nice Instagram profile, 10 out of 10. Or like, his profile sucks, 0 out of 10.
A bit like sort of like Google Place review, but for a person. How do we feel about it?
Yeah, the Chinese are already doing that. Like they rate their citizens.
How?
That, if they're sort of doing good things, like what they consider to be pro-social things, which is like in a bit of a communist lens, they get good marks, and that gives them more privileges, more access to services. If they do bad stuff, they get rated down.
And do we know this is true, or is it misinformation? Oh, there we go. We've got a conspiracy theory sound on over here. About over here. I mean, do you have any desires to try and to reject social media, to try and change it? Do you think this kind of rating system for people is positive? I guess we already have credit scores. Should it just be expanded to people scores?
Really, it's progress. It's too late. We've gone beyond it. I was talking to somebody, and they were asking me what's the average age of newspaper readers in this specific. I'm not saying it wasn't UK. This is from Europe. Guess. I was asked to guess, so I went. You pick a city. So I went 48. Because I knew it wasn't be young, because young people don't even look at it. Do you know what the average age is? Was for this group. It's a very big group. I'm not allowed to say the name. 70.
70.
I mean, eventually, traditional media will just die because people die. So it'll be gone. So unfortunately, we've got to accept social media with all its faults because they're already moved away from the traditional media.
So social media, in many ways, is doing the role of traditional print reporting media.
Oh, yeah. People get their news off YouTube now and TikTok. Trusted source.
Okay, so maybe it's just an evolution. Maybe we're just you're getting your news from TikTok, YouTube. How different is that from getting it from your newspaper on your iPad as opposed to a print newspaper? We've got some nods from Jack over here. Are you feeling pro? I mean, you've kind of connected to some subcultures previously.
Well, yeah, I agree with Ron. I feel like it's kind of just taken a new shape, really, as far as the media's went, and I think it's always a battle for the attention of the people. And I was talking to my dad about it the other day. I remember seeing newspapers when I was younger about Ronaldo, the Brazilian Ronaldo footballer, going to play for Newcastle United, which was like when I was younger. I was like, oh, but this is the good. Newcastle. I'm from Newcastle. Yeah. And my dad was like, and I was like, it was Ronaldo coming to Newcastle. He was like, absolutely not, son. That's just the headline of a newspaper. And I was like, why would you write something that isn't real? You know, it's like, you know, that's essentially just, you know, social media's like that, but the Wild West, you know, feels like, because there's no moderation in there.
Okay, so we've got social media's like the Wild West, although it has happened in print newspapers as well. And Helena.
Well, what I was about to say is that I think that the difference between reading the news on a newspaper or on your phone is actually widely different, because on your newspaper there's this sort of like there's this physicality of the paper, of the, not really of the book but of the paper, and I think that by doing that you can on the one hand distance yourself a little bit from the news, because like it's an object that you're holding, that is like that you're like physically holding. And but that, like, at the same time, when, like, for example, when I read a physical book, I can really like immerse myself in it. And so I basically think that it's a much better way than just using your phone, because yes, your phone is an object, but like basically you're always attached to your phone. Like, whilst a newspaper, you've read it, you put it down. Your phone, you always have it.
Okay, so you're pro the newspaper as a physical object, which is kind of, it doesn't always exist. You can get rid of it.
They say, well, they used to say, don't say it anymore, yesterday's news is today's chip wrappers. Or today's news is tomorrow's chip wrappers. But you wouldn't use your phone to eat your chips off of, would you? So the phone is a lot more precious, I think you're right. You know, whereas the newspaper is so disposable.
So does that mean you think we trust it more? Maybe there was sort of a kind of sound from Jack over here.
I can't help but feel like because it's physical and you can hold it, that it validates itself more. Do you know what I mean? As opposed to growing up on the phone, it's like, for me, I think I can't. It's hard to disassociate with it, but then it's quite interesting because so I'm a 90s boy. I was like early 90s, 92, and it was seeing the generation of like my parents getting on social media and Facebook and whatever were almost closely related to people who were so far younger than them and how they looked at it. And then it felt like there was a generation of us who'd actually grew up going outside and not having phones and you know, kind of forcing yourself into uncomfortable situations, but ultimately like it would round you as a person. And I feel like that's kind of now that we've seen that come the other way. I don't know. I saw someone reading the paper today on the tube, and it was actually quite refreshing for me. I was like, I mean, it's bullshit in there, but like, you know, it's like it's nice to see actually, like, you know, reading something. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe conflicted relationships with newspapers.
I can't help but feel like it's. I exactly hear what you're saying, because you can't put a newspaper down. You can put it in the bin. You can burn it. You can do whatever you want and get rid of it, which I think it can have a psychological effect. Every time I left auditions, one of the things that I was told was, if you ever get a script, put it in the bin when you're finished, and that'll help you kind of, you know, psychologically remove yourself from it and that kind of stuff. So, but I agree with that.
Yeah. No, I was... Sorry.
No.
I was just sort of thinking that although newspapers have gone, actually Google's going to suffer, because I'm centrist, so I'll read The Guardian, don't like it. But I'm slightly. I've moved sort. I used to be left of centre. I'm now slightly right of centre. But they were advertising the Telegraph for some ridiculous thing. It was like 20 quid for 3 months. But of course you miss it, and then you paid £99 for a year. But that's still only £2 a week. That's less a week. That's less than this cost. But I think where it has changed is a lot of people are missing it. You shouldn't really miss it. Is at the end of the newspaper stories now, they've got a huge amount of comments, but it doesn't end up in the free-for-all that you get on X. So there is a difference. There is a difference.
Okay, so maybe print media has sort of successfully adapted.
I think it'll come back. We want that sort of information, don't we? We want a trusted source. We want someone we can go and pin it back on, who's got a reputation to defend.
I just want to come back to the comment that I made earlier when it was just you and me, Evie, about when Talkaoke had Princess Kate, the Princess of Wales, around there, and Daily Mail came and they did a thing, and I was like, oh look, this is online, and we share it with everyone. And like I went through the comments because I was like, the comments are all going to be like, who's that guy in the middle of this glowing table? This is fun. Every single comment for the first 7 or 8 pages, and then I got bored, was all like, oh, Princess has really let herself go. She needs a different hairdresser. Or like, what was she thinking wearing that 2-piece suit? Every single comment was about her appearance. Either it was good, but like 80% of them were just like, she's let herself go, or she's made some kind of rudimentary fashion mistake. And there was not a single one about who's that guy in the middle of the glowing table.
So perhaps not well moderated comments. So it didn't feature...
That's probably what the Daily Mail readers wanted to talk about. So, you know, that's democracy, isn't it? But I was just surprised, that's all.
Okay, we've got a new face at the table. What's your name?
Pam.
Pam, brilliant. You've been very patient, Helena.
Thank you, Evie. So basically, yes, I would like to come back to the point of how you can like burn a newspaper and everything, because similarly, it's quite the same with a letter. You could burn letters, but like you cannot ever really burn a text. And I think that's like it's highly problematic, because like even if you delete the text from your phone, it's not the same thing as burning a letter.
Okay, so maybe there's like a permanence of the digital world that stresses us out. Ask Gary Lineker. Yes, because what's been happening with Gary Lineker this week?
He's finished, isn't he? Well, he's not finished. He tweeted something in defence of Palestine, and he said he didn't know, but there was a logo, a rat on it, which is anti-Semitic, not the association. But he's very left-wing and that, and he's a football commentator, but he thinks he's a journalist or whatever. I haven't got any sympathy for him whatsoever. No, I'm not interested in the dispute, because they've been fighting in that part of the world since biblical times. So I don't think it's solvable, personally. It's not my fight.
It's not your fight. So maybe you're thinking, if you're a football commentator, you should maybe stay out of politics, you should stay out of world history. Do we agree? Do we disagree? What do people think about on the table? I'll go Jack, then Pam. How about that?
Only because we've got in Newcastle we have one of the most politically inept and really bad at English but great footballers ever in Alan Shearer, who literally just he's belongs in a museum, but he was an amazing footballer. But my mum always used to have a go at me because his English he was an English player, but he's just his I don't know how to describe it. He'd be like that's exactly what I'd done instead of that's exactly what I did instead of done, and things like that. He was just So I did feel like that there was a series of I think it was when COVID happened, and there was a lot of actors that were coming out of the woodworks, just doing songs and from their mansions, being like, I know you're hurting out there, and I'm just gonna sing this song, and it was quite, I think I'm on the fence with that. I agree with Ron with that. I think Gary Lineker should just talk about the footy and retire gracefully and not feel like you've got to have something else to say. But I think maybe there is some responsibility to people who maybe retain the attention of people, or maybe aware that they retain a lot of attention, to kind of, not necessarily preach, but maybe just be a authentic human, and kind of I think that's what's nice. I think that's what's happening with celebrities in the industry, from what I've seen trying to get through as an actor and comedian. I think a lot of these formalities that fame's brought just kind of slowly breaking away, and we're realizing that all of these people are just they're real people, and they can be horrible people, and but yeah, that's I think I've hit a wall there.
No, that was perfect. So a lot of points there. Pam, you also had a point that you wanted to jump in on.
I think I agree with you to a certain extent. My problem is when everyone starts to call themselves an activist, particularly a lot of celebrities who just get, kind of paid to promote, there's so much hunger in the world, and you're like, you actually don't care because you're a billionaire, who's literally... Yeah, you're thriving off that, or you're getting private jets to, war-torn countries or whatever you want, however they want to phrase it. But I do think they have a certain responsibility to, be authentic and show up and say, this isn't right. And I don't think, don't preach. I don't think, they're not like skilled in that way necessarily. But if you have an audience, I do think you should be at least thinking about how you can best utilize that platform, because otherwise, what's it all for? It's just entertainment. We can't pretend that nothing's happening. I know, but think about the audience,
Okay, so Pam's saying think about the audience, think about the response. But if you have the ear of thousands of people, is that something you ought to be using? You should be using.
Not on Match of the Day, no.
Not Match of the Day.
No,
What about outside?
To be fair, he doesn't do it on Match of the Day.
Yeah.
It was off his social media feed, and I suppose it's up to if he wants to do that. But there is a bit of a problem with that with the BBC, and I don't know. I'm not all that.
How do we feel over here?
Right. So
I feel like you have a lot of thoughts.
yes. No. So basically, whilst I do completely see your point, Pam, about how it's very annoying when very rich celebrities call themselves activists. I would like to argue that whenever you do any kind of art, it becomes political. It's like, I don't necessarily think that they should call themselves activists because, well, of course, it can be very pretentious and very, look at me, I'm an activist. But every art form is inherently, usually, a form of activism, basically.
Resistance.
Of resistance, yes, that's a better word, I think.
That was supposed to be explosion because I was going to say that Helen's
I
dropped
was
the
like,
bomb
wow.
that art is always political, which I think is a perfect start for Talkaoke. But Pam, you have a voice that you want
I agree with you. I just think for me it's the label of I'm the ambassador for WaterAid, and you're you don't know a thing about not having water. Do you know what I mean? So it's that. It's you can't be the face of an issue when you have no idea what it means to do that, and actually when you're so distanced from it, and they're paid to do that kind of stuff. They're not doing it for, voluntarily or for goodwill. As much as that probably is the narrative, that's not the reality of it. All these celebrities become ambassadors. They get paid to do that, They get that solemn, did you know in 2013, 1.2, and you're someone told you that before you went on the screen. No, you never really knew that,
All right, I believe we might be going back in for the show itself. But if you enjoyed this, come back again. We're going to be out here when the show finishes, so come and find us. This has been The People Speak. We'll play some fun jazz, if I can find the... grab a...
Hot off the press.
There we go. We'll imagine we're playing some outro music. Michael will find it for you. Thank you for joining us, guys. Enjoy the talk, enjoy the show, and we'll see you soon. Hello, guys. Welcome to Talkaoke from The People Speak. Grab yourself a drink. Come and sit down. Currently, this is a talk show with no guests. It's just me monologuing in the middle. What did you guys think of the talk? Do you feel like you guys get in fights online? Do you feel like you get in fights online?
So I feel like when I was younger, especially when I was an undergrad, 18, I really got into fights online, and especially when the Trump had its first administration, that first election period, I was just very into getting into comment sections and. I don't know, and then I think at one point I started to realize that I was spending so much energy on just talking to people in the comments, and I wasn't actually getting anywhere, and it wasn't constructive. So now I try to focus my conversations in ways that, you spend your energy in places where you think you can actually make a difference. It doesn't really make much of a difference if you get into fights either and call each other names. It's just toxic. And people just, become even more ingrained in their own beliefs.
Yeah, okay, and interesting for this. And before you go, what's your name?
Nice to meet you.
What's your name, just for the mic?
Harpreet.
Harpreet?
Yes.
And
Shrina.
Trina and
Lindsay.
hello, I'm Evie. This is Talkaoke. It's a talk show where you guys are the guests, the VIPs. We were talking a little bit about, you mentioned the word toxic, and I'm kind of curious. I know just in the talk just now they mentioned about toxic relationships online and in real life. I'm curious to think, does anyone here have toxic relationships in their lives? Have you experienced a toxic relationship in your life? It's a nod. It's a nod. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. We'll give you a... That's what we like to see.
Do you mean to...
Yeah, take the microphone. Please do.
I don't think you're human if you haven't had a toxic relationship. Like, I think like in my family, I think dynamics. Well, I think also like if like my parents are like immigrants and I'm first generation, so I think there's always like the dynamics and the kind of friction of like being brought up here and like but also being part of your culture and like different beliefs and challenging those are there. I also work on abortion, so like I find that as much as I like the idea of steel manning an argument, I find it really difficult to have space and empathy for a lot of people that are anti-choice, because most people's anti-choice arguments are based on not caring about bodily autonomy or rights and human rights. So for me, that's like non-negotiable. So then I don't know if I'm the toxic one. Because I can't.
Okay,
That's
so
a
we're
thing.
reflective. I like this. So we've got some nods as well for Harbridge.
Well, I think I have a similar thing in that I'm from a second generation migrant family, and the conversations from when we were growing up, from parents that had experienced quite extreme levels of racism, and the way that they would express their trauma about this, in a way was toxic. And so you could understand the trauma, but actually what it built in us, was a very toxic understanding of our race relations, which meant that I went into my 20s with very hard-line, strong views, which clearly changed because I married a white man. But that was, to think of that now, back in my 20s, is just unbelievable, because it would have been, it's betrayal. And so, in a way, I think, even though that it was built from trauma, there was a toxic edge to it.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's get. No. Wait, I'll go back here, and then I know Lindsay's got a point, and then I want to bring the new face to the table.
Okay.
No.
I guess I feel that. So I married somebody I'm like one of the first people in my family to marry somebody outside of my culture, and I don't even mean outside my culture, but like the subset of my community, and it's interesting. Like so I've always been open. Like having grown up in London, I'm open to like people are people to me. Like you appreciate each other's cultures. You grow up with different cultures. I grew up in East London. Like it was just part of life. But I think now that I'm married to somebody that is not in my culture, what I realised that I miss, and I don't know if that's part of like how I was raised, but like having someone speak to me in my native tongue, like, or like share, not having to explain things in my culture, not that ever changed my husband, but like, I think those are the kind of things where you then other yourself. So maybe, like, again, it's that toxic thing where you're already fought, like, your whole community to, like, be with the person you want to love and be happy with and show people that love is love at the end of the day. But then when you're in it, you kind of feel a bit like, oh, well, it would be nice if I could just chat Gujarati with you and, like, not teach you how to do, like, garba and, like, now that I've got kids, like, I feel the responsibility to pass my culture down just with me, and I feel like I'm failing, like they're gonna have no culture. Like, my husband's French, and like I'm Gujarati, and I feel like it's just me doing it, and yeah, I don't know if that's toxic, but yeah, I feel it.
No, it's great. So yeah, we opened up the question by saying, sort of, kind of talking about toxic relationship. But actually, we've had some great questions, because actually, maybe kind of you pointed out that actually to have toxic relationships is maybe in some ways quite human. It's also to do with migration and where you sit and communities and those overlapping ones and being open, but also understanding things. That's brilliant. We've also got two new faces at the table. So can you let us know your names?
Yeah, everybody knows my name apart from you. It's Mark.
Mark. Hello, Mark. I'm Evie. There we go.
I'm Matthew.
Matthew.
Lindsay. Harpreet.
Shrina.
Perfect. You probably all know each other's names already. But that's okay. You know what? Because we like to get to know each other on the Talkaoke table. Okay, so we've been talking about toxic relationships, and Lindsay, you've been very patient because you had a point that you wanted to make, and then I'm interested to hear over this side of the table what toxic relationships, online, offline, family, intergenerational, what they mean to you.
I forgot my other point, but it must not have mattered. But I will say, like, in response to what you said, it's really interesting because as a Black American woman who grew up in the Deep South, I was the first generation in my family to grow up without Jim Crow and to be able to, like, go to school with people who did not look like me. And so I was very much, used to being friends with, all these different kinds of people. But then when it came to talking to other, like, Black Americans in Georgia, a lot of times I was actually criticized. So, and my mom, I know she really wanted me to develop this, closer relationship with, like, as you said, like, the community, especially because, like, that's, very much what she identified with as home and comfort, and she wanted me to have that experience as well. But when I go to a birthday party or I go to, like, be with the community, oftentimes I'd be criticized. And I'd be told, like, oh, why are you trying so hard to talk like a white person? Or why are you trying so hard to, like, act white? And I wasn't. I was just being myself. And then I also thought, well, why is it that we're trying to box each other in? Because there's so many different ways that you can be Black. Like, I am Black, therefore the way that I speak is talking like a Black person. So it was really interesting because I was never really able to have that option to kind of, like, turn to my community and then feel like, yes, like, here I feel like I can just breathe and be myself. I don't have to, like, try to reach across. Like, my whole life I've always been reaching regardless of who I'm talking to.
Fantastic.
Like, how long have you been here? Do we need to use the microphone?
You don't have to.
I feel we're in a really close proximity with each other, and the microphone might be surplus to requirements. Yeah. It is.
But I mean, if you
You can hold it, right? Because it'll make me feel a bit better. It seems to be working anyway. Well, no, to be honest, I think, like, I work better without it.
Okay. Well, we can respect that.
As soon as I'm given some sort of amplification, I don't need amplification.
When it gets
I don't need it,
louder,
right? That's the thing. Well, I'm curious. I think that's an amazing perspective, which very few people have. Like that transition of community and what it means to be a part of the first of something. I am mixed race. I was brought up in a small town in Scotland in the 80s. And my dad was the only brown person in maybe 16,000 people. Maybe in the village it was about 800. And we faced quite intense racism for most of my early life. And then I moved to London and I got white privilege. And that is a really odd space to be in, right? And you kind of sit in this weird parallel of why I am the way I am, right? So I'm really intrigued by your generational kind of perspective that is really individual to an evolution of society that's determined by time, and nothing else, is that thing. So I don't know, are we supposed to be talking about toxic relationships?
We can talk about, you guys are leading the conversation, we're facilitating it between us, so whatever you guys want to talk about. That's what kind of prompted this.
I think what you were saying, it's completely true. I realised, like, this between no, as in,
you're just self-aware on the Talkaoke table, but we can it's all right. We'll push past it.
but I felt the same way. So, like, in some spaces, like, I wasn't Indian enough. Like, so I got bursary to go to private school, and so then the way I spoke changed a bit. But I still grew up in East London, and so, like, I was called Coconut, and, like, so like, and then I married somebody who was white. So, yeah, and I think going to your point about being mixed race, I've got 2 mixed race children. So for me, like, I've always said to them, like, you're not half of anything. Like, you are Indian, you are British, and you are French. Like, don't let anyone tell you who you are, because the world will tell you who you are, but I'm going to tell you who you are. But then I feel that responsibility because I also feel that kind of divide. Like, I feel like when I go sometimes to some community events, I've got a big family and I'm with them, I feel protected. But if I go to some other things, I'm very aware, heightenedly aware that I don't want my children to be treated as other. So yeah, you kind of feel like you're just going, and I hope it's different for my kids, because, like, there's so many more, like, mixed heritage kids that I do feel like they proudly say, like, I'm Indian, I'm French, like, I'm this, I'm that. And, like, they're surrounded by kids that are everything. And it's so different to, like, us growing up in the 80s where you get called Paki, like, every other day. And your parents get beaten up. So, like, it is different. But I get worried with everything that's happening that it's coming back. And I have to, and I feel like I need to teach my kids resilience. Like, you know, like how my dad taught me how to fight. My cousins taught me how to fight. Yeah, so I'm actually gonna, but that's what I'm sending my 8-year-old. I'm sending my 8-year-old to kickboxing in September, and my 5-year-old to karate because they need to learn to fight and defend themselves. And I'm like, wow, this is like full circle.
The idea of perspective to me is if we want to talk about misinformation, the internal narrative that we tell ourselves is a constant delusion, right? Yeah. It is a perspective of delusion that if one can expand one's perspective through however means, it's usually by a level of self-interrogation, then one determines an objective truth. Because everything is a subjective truth, right? And but the wider the perspective that we have is the more complex our ability to see, or sorry, I'm confusing language, but the idea that we'll see more is better like that. And that's why I'm interested in people who have lived many lives, because many lives determine many perspectives. Yeah. Sorry, I'm Mark.
Kieran. Mark, Kieran, Lindsay, Harpreet, Trina. Brilliant. Great. I mean, does anyone want to chime in on that? Have you got different experiences, similar experiences, a different perspective on it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is the reason why it's so important. Oh, well, no, sorry. I was going to expand on what you had to say. But I just think that's why it's so important that we actually talk to each other, because I think a lot of this, you know, like when we're talking about things like racism, prejudice, a lot of that's based off of assumptions that we make about other people. So I got really interested in this as someone who grew up in an area, again, where I dealt with lots of prejudice, or, you know, when people finally did accept me and I was let in, then they'd say something like, oh my God, I totally forgot you were black, as if it was supposed to be a compliment. Or like one friend, like when I was 12, said, oh my God, I hate black people. And I was like, what? And she was like, oh, no, not you, you don't count. And I was always told, oh, you don't count. So I was very curious to see, like, okay, well, what is it that is driving people to feel this way? And I found that, at least in the US, we are more driven by the representations of, you know, the other in the media than the people that we see in front of you, which means that you can meet like 100 people in your life that don't count, and yet you'll still think, oh, well, you're the exception to the rule. The rule is what I see on TV. And then when I started university, I would have, you know, roommates from around the world, and like roommates, because we were in America. And I once had this roommate from China. And one day she sat down with me and she's like, you know, it's really interesting. I used to really hate black people, and my parents told me that black people were criminals, and I thought like all black people did was just complain about how everyone's racist while like black people were like robbing other people. And it turns out like, no, you're actually okay. Yeah, you're actually fine. And it was just because we were having conversations about, I think as we said in the room, like not just having conversations about race, but just human conversations about hummus, as we were talking about last time, like just like, you know, anything that helps to humanize the other person.
Yeah, so maybe touching on a little bit about what the talk touched on about kind of empathy and how we kind of create empathy with others, and maybe try and create empathy in people for ourselves. I mean, I don't know if that's something that you guys think of, or yeah, there's some nods over here. Have you got a point that you'd like to add on that, or?
No, I think it's true. It's that when you're in conversation, it's trying to understand, even if that person is holding a very opposing view, or you're feeling othered, and then actually it's quite easy to be othering that person in that conversation, and it's very hard to then bring it into you know, a conversational level that actually allows that person, even if they are so, you know, there's such polarized views, to actually have a say. It's very easy not to engage in that. And I think that's actually learning that is, I think, really important, because that building conversation is where you'll get the change. But if you're just at loggerheads, it's just not going to work, is it? So this is where the empathy, I think, and I'm learning that a bit more, I feel like I have learned that a bit more.
I've had lots of hands. I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go here. And then here, sorry.
I think where I struggle with empathy is when it affects my kids. So I've got, it's really weird. So the thing about you're different, my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, they openly, I remember going on a family holiday with my husband's family, obviously I'm the only person of colour, and they would talk about immigrants, about how immigration is bad, about how Muslims are this, and like how there's crime and all of this stuff. And I'm just like, I was like, hello, like, I was like, my mum and dad are immigrants. Like, they came to this country as immigrants. They're like, no, but it's different because you're not Muslim. I'm like, no, it's not. And I was like, you know, your grandchildren are half Indian and half your family. Like so like my in-laws love my grandkids but they see them as theirs, not as who they are, and they want them to come and spend the summer with them in France. And I said to Jenny, I'm not going to let them do that unless I'm there, because they will talk about this stuff like it's got nothing to do with them. And that's where I find it really difficult, because I try to explain in a really rational way. Your grandchildren are brown, like, they ain't tanned, like, look at me, like, they are who they are. We're all immigrants. There is no other person. You can't speak like that. But she can't compute that. And then for me, I have to have a distance where I'm just like, I can't speak to you about this because my kids love you. You love them. There's a familial relationship here. So then I do the voice. I just don't talk about it with them. But if they ever say anything, then I will say something. But it's horrible because you just feel like, and then my husband's talked to them and he's even said, like, I never realized I had white privilege until I went out with you, until I actually saw, like, when we were together in Paris, like, how people would look at us and, like, how I never realized any of that stuff. I'm like, you wouldn't, you're a white man. Like, why would you realize this? And even more so now we've had kids. But
I'm going over
Kieran,
here,
go ahead. Kieran will
Lindsay,
stop
and
you.
then over here.
All right. Well, I think like it's interesting what you're saying. It's a slightly different point, but the boundaries that you put up are necessary to sustain your mental health. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think there's a difference between being able to create empathy. Like, I mean, it's not something that you dish out freely. Do you know what I mean? You've got to find your own space to create those boundaries, and that's a really tough place to be. You know, because if somebody's not going to budge, then you have to do that to protect yourself. But then there's the point which I think is the flip side of that, is where somebody starts to show interest. And one of the things that I've noticed is people don't give them the opportunity to reflect even in a marginal way. Like, so what that girl said to you at school was actually an opening up rather than a diss, do you know what I mean? But because they don't understand the language and the narrative and the quite insulting levels of what they're saying, do you know what I mean? But I found that in these instances, people tend to start shouting straight away. Do you know what I mean? Because to recognise when you need to have your boundaries up, and then to recognise when actually somebody's trying. And I noticed it in the Black Lives Matter movement, is everybody was trying, but they were trying from such a difficult place of construct, of fear, of actual self-reflection, that people were like, you should be doing better. Do you know what I mean? You should be doing that. And actually, like, fucking hell, 500 years of white privilege, right? It takes a lot to crack through, man. It's a hard, it's going to be a painful self-observation to be like, we are the bad guys. You know, it's like it says, and it kind of, but every step starts with the first foot forward, right? And being able to recognise that, so that you can let your boundaries down, so that you can go, wait a minute, okay, cool, this person, because maybe it starts with an attack first of all, but then you go, oh, they were trying there. And that's a really, I think, that listening part of where society needs to kind of be able to recognise where the boundaries have to drop a little bit, you know. But it's a tough one. It's a really tough one, because anybody who's been attacked, it's wounding, you know.
Yeah, you're protecting yourself.
Yeah.
With the boundaries, and basically not making it so binary. I think it's important to understand complexity. And we don't understand complexity in arguments often, especially when it's about race. It's very strong. It's very polarised. It's very black and white. And, you know, excuse the terms there, but it's true. And I think that when we think from that perspective, you're not going to get conversation. It's not conversation, it's a battle. And I think you're absolutely right about understanding where the boundaries lie and where you need to start shifting them slightly and bringing them down, because otherwise you're not getting engagement. I think that's
Can I
it.
just respond to that just quickly? There's something that I theorised through toxic individuals.
Keep on going. Keep it going. We've got a point from Lindsay. I'm gonna
Okay,
come back to you.
sorry. So I just wanted to address, like the feeling of being attacked. It's really difficult because I don't think that we can really get anywhere when it comes to progress if one group is feeling under attack the entire time. And even right now in the U.S., you're seeing that lots of education and books are being banned now that just teach about like Black history or Indigenous history because they say, well, we don't want American kids to feel bad about themselves, but no one's telling them, oh, you're a bad person. We're just trying to educate you about what we've done wrong in the past so we don't repeat it. And another time, I got really into like genealogy research and stuff, and I was 19 and I took a DNA test, which I probably should not have done, and now the government has my data, but I digress. And I had all these, I had tons, hundreds of white matches, and I found out that I'm actually quite partially European, and I was trying to figure out where my ancestors were enslaved and all this kind of stuff. And I was invited to join this Facebook group where people were doing research together and giving each other advice. And I asked, the people in the group, do you have any advice for me being able to approach one of my, white cousins to ask them about maybe some information they know about their, antebellum ancestors so I can learn more about my ancestors in a way where they won't feel alienated because I'm not trying to start anything. I just want to have an open, friendly conversation with these people. I fell asleep. I woke up. And then there are all these angry comments underneath it, oh, she's trying to stir the pot. I was doxxed by the admin of the group. And someone contacted me through my university email. It was listed on the doxed list and said, you should contact the FBI. Oh my God, I'm really scared for you. And it turns out there were lots of white supremacists in the group as well. So sometimes, even if you're just trying to have a conversation, you're explicitly saying, I don't want to attack anybody. People will still feel attacked, and that's very difficult. And then to your point about boundaries, I think that back in the day, maybe before 2016, because I grew up in the Deep South, I was in a very conservative area, and I was very used to being able to have very good constructive conversations with people across the divide. But then it went from, fiscal policy to whether or not I should exist. And there's a certain point where I kind of have to draw that boundary. And over the radio with the riots over the summer, I remember someone said oh yeah, they should, people who were literally talking about attacking me in the street, and I was getting death threats, saying, well, we should be heard too. And, I was thinking, well, it's asking a lot of me if you're coming at me with a death threat and saying I should not exist. It's asking a lot of me to hear you out.
But that's the point about boundaries. You see, you can't. Then you've got to work that out if you're in a conversation. Yeah, but if you've got you're being attacked, then it's understanding that, and that's where it's got to go back up. You can't.
And then Kieran,
I
and then
was-
I've got a point over here. Hold that thought.
I was only going to come at this from a very different perspective in that, I think there needs to be more platforms like this to have good conversation. My background is I grew up in a very rural village, kind of small town, near Birmingham, where there was one person of colour in my 300-person year group. So my entire upbringing was not understanding anything else but white person England. Now, it was a respectful, great scenario where, from my perspective, there was no issues. I have no idea how this person in my year group felt at all. And there was also the classic old school Britain parental situation where there was never you don't come home and say, I had a tough day at school, Dad, or do you know what, there was something really hard today, Mum? It was head up, tough day, just get on with it, you're fine. So there was never this. There was never a point where, in my entire childhood, where you have a difficult conversation. So, go to uni, people from all over the country, they're sharing their experiences, and you're kind of going, oh yeah, cool, that sounds hard. But you don't delve into it. You don't try and understand what does that mean for someone, or didn't hear the word white privilege until probably third year of uni, because that was never shared. That was never a conversation that was had at school. There was never a PSHE, which is kind of like studies where it's here's how to have tough conversations. Yeah. It's the classroom space where you talk about sex ed or stuff outside of English, maths, or science. And to be fair, my wife runs a charity that supports refugees and asylum seekers, and my only experience of understanding what other people went through is entirely meeting the people she works with through conversation. So I don't know why it's so strange still in 2025 that there aren't conversations happening at 10 years old or 15 years old or 20 years old.
Yeah, hold that thought for a second, just because I know you had a response that you wanted to come back
That's
on.
well, I think it's because that's part of the infrastructure of white supremacy. Unfortunately, is that they don't want us to mix, and they're playing a game of divide and rule once again. It's just that same. They're like, well, fuck. How do we keep people under control? We divide them. You know, it's just it's a fairly basic model that's existed for quite a long time, and it's so obvious that it's like you're just like, oh shit, man. But so to go back to what we were saying earlier, I had this theory through many difficult circumstances that we all have self-preservation narratives and self-preservation principles, and I kind of like got in quite a lot of trouble in conversations over a long period of time, and I realised that it's a theory anyway. I suppose I kind of called it, I thought the pandemic that existed was actually low-level narcissism rather than anything else, and actually I revised that on the basis of narcissism not really, it became an overused word, and actually what I conceive is that there's kind of like a self-preservation narrative where if we can get so far into somebody's psyche and then they'll allow it to a certain effect, and then eventually that vibration will be too much for them and it will trigger a response at that point, and there's this every threshold that everybody has that we just have to find the delicate spot where that threshold can be challenged, and it's come through a lot of experience of very difficult circumstances, very difficult conversations where I've been pushing because I'm quite antagonistic, or I used to be anyway, and that has taught me to learn about these self-preservation narratives that everybody carries. I mean, each one of us has like a force field of that bit, is where your values get pushed, and to the point that at one point you're just pushed back, you know. But it's that question, you know, like asking questions is much more important. But I'm getting there with it. Fuck you can't. Sorry.
We had, you were,
Do you want to go?
You can go first.
And then I'll come over here, don't worry. And then maybe we'll go over there, who knows? Come on, join us. Oh, there we go. Round of applause, we're going to find a round of applause. But if not, let us know very quickly, what's your name?
I want one at home.
And then you had a point earlier, it was kind of, we were discussing about PSHE maybe.
Yeah, so I was...
Yeah, come on, grab a seat,
I was just saying that, like, to your point about why do those conversations not happen, I feel really lucky that I grew up in a part of London that is now super desirable but was not desirable when I was growing up in East London. And because of that, you had everyone, like every type of, all immigrants just basically lived here. And so you were exposed and that was your life, and you just got on with being kids. Like, you played games, you went to each other's houses, you just did stuff. And because the communities were similar in some sense, in their value system, so they had come from the global south and they had very similar, so like there were aunties that would be your auntie and they had the same structure and mechanisms of society and community. So it didn't matter that my friend was Nigerian, like it was still, her mum would be my auntie, and I would eat at her house, she would come to my house, her mum would tell me off, my mum would tell her off. Like, it was all this shared way of living. And I feel like I only noticed the difference, that community wasn't like that everywhere when I went to secondary school, and I was one of the minority when I wasn't before because I'd gone to private school. So like, that's when I realised the difference. It was a very different space, and I was made to feel very aware of being very different. But I think that's really important about having the conversations, but it's difficult because most of society doesn't grow up that way. And like, I see like how it's really lovely for my kids, like schools do make a whole effort around talking about sexuality from a young age, talking about LGBTQI, like in my kids' class, like it's normal for my daughter to have friends got two mums, like their librarian is non-binary, like these are things that they just are part of their life. And but also the conversations that I have, and there's still like people in their classrooms that will be like, no, why is my child coming to this? They don't need to know that this is a vagina. They don't need to know about LGBTQI. So it's not all rosy, but the school, I think having mandated education in the system that everybody has to go through helps to break down those barriers. So you're not relying on people like just mixing like, yeah, you're not relying on parents. It's like, yeah, because I think I find it, one of the things that I used to look for in a prospective partner is like, who are your friends? Like, how mixed are your friends? Like, if I'm the only brown / person of color in your life, then I'm not into this, because one, I've had enough people fetishize me, and two, like, I don't want to have to explain or be some exotic person that you want to be with. So I think, and it's really hard to find mixed groups of friends. And to me but that doesn't necessarily mean that group is closed-minded. So I think that's the thing. It's about having those conversations, and I do believe our children are the future. Like, and the education system has a massive role to play, and it's a shame that all these governments are fucking it up, basically.
I'm going to go to Lindsay next, but we had a new face at the table. What's your name?
Matthew.
Matthew, fantastic.
Hello. So it's really interesting what you said about education. I think that is the way forward. But then again, as you said, then there's governments that are trying to mess that up. I think one thing that... Sorry? Why? I mean, it brings us back to what I was saying earlier, at least like in the U.S., where, you know, they're dismantling lots of this education because they don't want kids to feel like they have a reason to feel ashamed of their country. And teaching someone about history does not tell you that you should feel ashamed. It's not an attack on something that you did. We all know that you were not alive 200 years ago. And yet, and still, they're like, oh no, we don't want to potentially make someone feel guilty, and then strike that down. But I wanted to respond to what you were saying about, you know, about how we need to like rely on the sense of like self-preservation, and then also how there's this kind of need to, you know, put ourselves into these categories to maintain systems of power. And so we always have to question, like, who does this benefit, and why are we split up in this kind of way? Why are we kind of like polarized and put against each other? If you look at the history of the U.S., for instance, race, it was built on the concept of race because like during the time of slavery, when they first brought slaves over, it was actually Christianity. So they were like, if you're Christian, then you're a brother. And if you're a brother, then you cannot be enslaved. And then what started to happen was that, like, first you started to have, like, black people converting to Christianity. And so then you had to make it more about race. Then you had to find a buffer group, right? Because you have these poor white people who were like, well, I identify with the enslaved person. So let's team up together. We're different, but I see our commonality. Let's fight together against our common oppressor, which is, like, the rich people. The rich white people tell the poor white people, oh, no. You're one of us. We're the same. We don't like them. And they pointed at the enslaved people and said, okay, we're against them. And then basically, like, the other part of the narrative with self-preservation was we need to make sure that we keep them under control because they are threatening the purity of our women as well, and therefore the purity of our country. So you have to kind of turn, like, to maintain a system of oppression and division, you basically have to turn the oppressed people that you're putting at the bottom, you have to turn them into a threat, and then you find a buffer group in the middle, such as colored people in South Africa, as, you know, okay, well, you're not quite as good as me, but, like, you're still more like me than them.
There's some sounds on this side of the table.
There was a little bit. I come from a family who were, I suppose, one of the white oppressors. My family were the Jute Barons of Dundee 100 years ago from Pakistan, and in Pakistan. They built the whole city of Dundee. They built schools, they built hospitals, they built all sorts of things. They thought at the time they were doing the right thing. And I think we've got to stop the language. I think we've got to change the language, because I don't believe for 1 second that every single person who was white at that time, in the Victorian era, the Georgian era, was a bad person. And yet somehow this whole division is cast around this idea that somehow the empire, everything about it was bad. Yes, the idea of it is bad, but not all of it was bad. Some of it was built on the idea of trying to make society better for a great many people. My father's family built railway lines across the whole of Africa. they thought they were doing the right thing. They thought they were trying to do the right thing. I don't think they were part of what we now consider to be the evils of slavery. I don't think they were part of any of that. I know they weren't. But we keep dividing it in such binary terms, and it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. The jute farms were bought by the people of Pakistan. The people of Pakistan treated the kids far worse than the people from Dundee who set them up originally. Far worse. And I think we've got to be really careful. I think language is so key in this debate. And we're so foolish with it. Our debates are so binary and they're so stupid. And we absolutely fail to see the good that people tried to do over generation, over generation, over generation. And they've been reduced into this argument or this argument. And in between it were thousands and thousands and thousands of people who tried to make society better. We are now at a time where we talk about the rich and the poor. Anyone who goes to private school, my God, they must be awful.
I'm gonna pause you there.
Those are people who are just trying to educate their kids.
I'm going to pause you there because you've thrown a load of big topics on the table, which I think we've already got some responses on as well. We've also got a new face at the table. What's your name?
Kevin.
Kevin, and just to remind me.
Matthew.
Mark.
Kieran.
Lindsay.
Harpreet.
Shrina.
Anthony.
I'm Evie. Welcome to Talkaoke. So there was lots of things about binaries, creating boundaries, creating language. Was the problems of empire made up by the fact that maybe there were some good things that came in there? How do we decide whether they're good or bad? Lots of things, and also there were quite a lot of hands coming up as well. So I'm going to go over here first, and then over here.
There's a lot of information. I think when we talk about words such as bad and good, you're right, they can be quite basic when you're talking about something as complex as the British Empire, which was a conquering force that went to other countries and invaded them. And
yeah, come and grab a seat. Yeah, come around this way. Around this way.
When we talk about what were the good things and what were the bad things, I think you have to think about the perspective of who benefited and who didn't benefit. So just from a historical perspective, I think when we talk about railways, which is always something that people bring up when they talk about empire and a positive impact of railways, just in the context of where my family's from. So my family originally from Gujarat, but my dad was born in Kenya and my mum was born in Fiji. And the reason my dad ended up in Kenya is because they were working on the Indian Railway, were sent to Kenya, no choice, to administer the railway systems in Kenya. And the reason that my granddad went to Fiji is because to work on the sugarcane plantations, again, it's part of the process of empire. The railway systems were built not for the benefit of the people, but for the benefit of the British Empire to move goods across the country. So I think it's really important that we think about who benefited. The UK and the Industrial Revolution was possible because of empire. And when the British did leave many of the countries that they were present in, Pakistan didn't exist before the British were there. There was India. And so I think when we talk about the context of empire, and people may have had good intentions, but within a system that was created on power imbalances, where the people who were in those countries that didn't have a choice about the British coming and controlling those countries, I think in those situations we need to really understand who benefited, because autonomy comes into that, and ultimately Britain invaded half of the world. That wasn't a choice.
I'm going to pause you there, hold that thought, because I've got a point over here as well.
Yeah, I totally. You're talking about how the colonial conversation is too binary, but for me, it stays binary when there is no acknowledgement of guilt or reparations, and the dominant kind of dialogue of it all is that the establishment can't admit any guilt because of this tidal wave of change that's going to get, channeled, and it's freezing the conversation. There needs to be actual admission that there was it was the greatest atrocity on earth, and it has fucked the conversation. There is no middle ground.
Yeah, I'm going to add a little bit here.
Right, so my mum's from Wales and my dad's from India. My dad was born in Kenya as part of the railways as well. Right? I wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the empire. Right? I've contemplated this. It's been a big part of my internal what the fuck. Yeah, exactly, right? You're like that. Oh, right. And so I think there's a discerning between what is and what is good and bad. And the start point is what is. This exists. What do we do about it? And the acknowledgement is a big part of, right, okay, well, there is a lot of negativity that came with this. And yeah, we can spout about technology till the cows come home, but ultimately, society is curious and it's opportunistic. And when a system exists, people become opportunistic. Capitalism is opportunistic. It's not like, I don't believe in the conspiracy of capitalism, right? I believe in the fact that a gap opens there and people, I think it's a lot more complex than it just being somebody right at the top controlling all the money. It's a gap opening in a place where somebody goes, I'm having a bit of that. And if somebody moves in and it just goes, da-da-da-da, and it unfolds into opportunity, it's like COVID. It was just a massive money-making opportunity. The empire was a massive money-making opportunity. And your ancestors from Dundee may have been intrinsically good people, but they were opportunistic. And the Scottish were basically, but these opportunities have to be interrogated at some point. Those opportunities to go, right, well, who disadvantaged out of those opportunities, and where does the imbalance lie on the basis of people taking those opportunities? And nobody in the structural hierarchy that exists at the moment is willing to, and I think this is where we're at as a society, is that the white supremacist narrative that we sit in this moment, the hierarchy of society is being questioned, and it is scared, and it is starting to hit its own self-preservation vibration narrative, and it's just going, oh shit, what's happening here? The imbalance of power, the opportunities of the economic war which is existing between BRICS nations and the Western democracy at the moment, which is very, very apparent, we've been at war. The East and the West have been at war for the last 20 years, right? Economically, since neoliberalism took its course, and we are at the zenith of that battle now. And white supremacy is coming to the top to battle its failing principles, because the likes of social media is showing its face. The fact that information is so obvious for people to be like, oh wow, the propaganda machine of colonialism no longer exists. The education system that history was taught in the British school system is now being questioned by the apparent hierarchy that really did exist, So the pendulum is swinging in the direction where colonialism can no longer wash its face in public with the pride that it did do for so long. Like the such brilliant thing. We owned all these countries and everything. He's like, oh, to what effect? And that question is now allowing itself to be asked. And at that point, it looks like shit, right? Like realistically, you do any digging into the history, and yes, the opportunities existed, but there was a lot more bad things for people than
I'm going to let a response over here as well from Alexander.
It's not a response, because I think we're saying the same thing. We're absolutely saying that, but yes, from different perspectives, because I suppose we have different history. I think what I'm saying is that actually these things are the same. They are absolutely the same. Is that actually the people within the mechanism are actually just trying to do their job, are trying to do what they think it is. The fact that we have global companies now who literally exercise power across the globe, the power is no different. It's no different to what it was 100 years ago.
Okay, so perhaps
this is my point. I don't think it is evolved. I don't think it's evolved in any way whatsoever. I think it's actually more binary now than it's ever been. I think it's more difficult now.
I had a point over here.
No, don't worry. It's big.
There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go over here.
No, I was just going to say, I just think it's a modern version of it. Like how colonization of India happened wasn't the British government, it was the East India Company. So it was a business that started it. So that was this first form of globalization. It's only when the East India Company had its own army, it was becoming more powerful than the crown, that the crown then took over, and it took that. So what we're talking about is globalization that was, it looks different, but it's the same thing, same but different, ultimately.
Okay, so maybe is technology the new empire that we're living through? I'm going to pause you there just because for the people who've just walked in, this is Talkaoke. It's a pop-up talk show. Come and grab a seat. Is technology the new empire? Do you have toxic relationships? Lindsay's got a point. Before you go, guys, leave us with a final thought. Anything about what we talked about today? Just a final thought. It's a rule of Talkaoke.
No, well, I think that we should question the economic system. We should question, the power structures, where they've come from. We should have that conversation. But I think we definitely need to understand complexities, for sure, in all of that.
Thank you very much.
Everything is interrelated, economics, social issues. But I think that you can't ignore the detrimental impact of colonialism, of globalization on the backs of people, and just be like, oh, it worked out, look at the world. Because you just can't do that. There's no healing, then there's no room for empathy, and then there's no room for change. Because you're ignoring the majority of people that suffered and are not getting any kind of justice, ultimately.
Fantastic. Thank you. Final thought. Thank you so much. Lindsay.
Yeah. Thank you. So I think that when we're talking about progress and innovation, we really need to be asking ourselves at what cost, and we should not discount the perspectives of those who did have to pay with their lives for this kind of progress. I mean, my ancestors on both sides. I have ancestors who were slaveholders who very much profited from all of this and from industry, and then ancestors who were enslaved. And I don't think that we can really have a conversation about, for instance, was colonialism good, without actually having people who were, negatively impacted by colonialism at the table. I don't think that we can actually say, oh, but there was progress, and then, make this kind of definitive answer based off of that without actually asking, well, this person had to pay for this with their life. Aren't you going to bring them to the table as well? And we have to ask them, was it worth it? And if we're going to bring it, to modern day with technology, the technology question, we're talking about things such as AI. Right now, AI is evolving so quickly, and we're putting things out there into the world without actually questioning at what cost, what are the potential harms. Do we need to be putting this out there? I was in a course once, an engineering course, where I was studying immersive technology, and they were talking about, before we know it, we're going to have this kind of, technology and that kind of technology. And I raised my hand and I said, what if this falls into the wrong hands? This could be very harmful and very dangerous. And they said, oh, that will never happen. And I said, whenever we're creating something new, we always have to be asking ourselves at what cost. It doesn't really matter about the benefit if we don't ask who might have to pay for it with their lives.
I don't think we know who the wrong people are.
You don't know what the wrong people are. We've got loads of new faces at the table, so we're going to do a quick right. Okay, you're going to shoot off. Give us your final thought before you do.
I quite enjoyed this. It's really fun. I hope you do too.
Definitely get a round of applause. Grab a card as well. Come and find us. Please let us know what your name. This is Talkaoke. I'm Evie. It's a pop-up talk show. You guys are our VIPs. What's your name?
Aoife.
Aoife. Lindsay.
Manreeve. Andrea.
Mikey.
Margot. And over here as well. What's your name, quickly?
My name's Kevin.
Kevin. Brilliant, Kevin. We'll come and chat to you in a minute. Dr. Kevin.
I just want to say I've really enjoyed all of this. It's fantastic. I love the way you're constantly swiveling around to see if anyone wants to say anything. That's really very charming. And I can't get enough of it. So thank you. Thanks everyone for your views that have been shared.
Oh, that will always win a final thought. Grab a card as well. Come and find us. So we've been talking about, is technology the new empire? At what cost? It's quite an interesting point of view, I think, for talking about technology in general, social media. At what cost do we kind of adopt these technologies? But you guys are in charge of the conversation. Where do you want to go? What do you guys? What thoughts do you guys have?
I mean, it's also interesting not just the social cost to it, but also the environmental cost to it, and the fact that like loads of these new technologies come to us without us actually realizing the environmental impact that they have. Like the fact that if you tweet "thank you" to ChatGPT, it uses up gallons and gallons and gallons and gallons and gallons of water, right? Or where the batteries from our phones are coming from. These are all things that marketing practices are trying actively to hide, whereas they should be more at the forefront of purchasing decisions from consumers.
We've also got a new face at the table. Let us know your name.
Oh, Liana.
Fantastic. Short over here.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think like technology itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. I just think when it's led by money rather than usefulness, that's when we find ourselves in weird situations where, you know, AI is guzzling up gallons of water or whatever. I think rather than thinking about practical usage, it's sort of put in a capitalist context rather than an impactful context.
Okay, and we had earlier someone saying that they didn't agree with the capitalist conspiracy. We've got a new face at the table.
Oh, what's the topic? What's your name? My name. Oh, that's the topic. Shahidovich.
Well, we think we had some points over here.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you know, the political system is a kind of technology as well. And people sort of talk about it as if it's neutral, but it's actually a technology that can be improved upon. It's also a technology that harms people, but for some reason I don't think, you know, all the billions that go into AI, we're putting no research into how to actually make the technology of democracy or politics better and more healthy.
I think working in policy as well, particularly in space, the advancement of technology is always accompanied by a lack of regulation, and that's done because of commercial reasons, and that's always purposeful, and governments always purposely take a long time to regulate because they prefer a lack of regulation to allow complete freedom to manipulate and make as much profit as possible and really kind of push the boundary, and they don't. It never starts from a place of where can this be the most good, who could it harm, any of those things. It's always retrospective, and that is actually purposeful. So I just wanted to make that point that it's purposeful. It's not through lack of or oversight or something like that. It is conscious choice. Yeah, and I do actually agree. Somebody made the point earlier that it's a kind of new kind of colonialism. Countries were run as businesses. So after the East India Company and those kind of merchants went in and they acted as de facto governing bodies, the governments, as it was highlighted, took over. But once the country didn't make profit anymore, they'd already seized the assets. The companies had already owned the mines, owned the ground, owned any of the assets in the country, and then they no longer need to run the country anymore because it's making a loss. They just get the money from the assets coming in and continuing to come in. So it's still a business, and those are still owned. And if we talk about colonialism as if it's something in the past, and just last year in Australia, they voted to keep the legislation as it is, and Aboriginals are not considered humans in Australia. I just want to say that again, Australian Aboriginals, native people, are not considered human according to the law. So when we talk about colonialism as something in the past, it's not in the past, it's now.
Okay, so thinking about this term, it is actually colonialism. It's very much in here. I'm having slight mic problems. I'll turn that one back on. I actually turned it on. Anyway, I'm gonna go over here. There's some nods over here.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of new forms of colonialism out there today, right? Like colonialism is a beast that has shifted in nature, but it's still there. Like it's present throughout, right? Like and it's even, I think it's even more apparent in a world in which like people own less, right? Like all of a sudden, like we are using all of these things from companies and subscription services and that sort of stuff, and it's increasing our dependencies on companies because we don't own the car, we lease the car, so we're dependent of that company, and we don't own the bicycle, we lease the bicycle, so we're dependent of that company. So I think it's just shifted in nature, but it's still there at its core.
I've got a point over here.
Yeah, I mean, colonialism is still very much a thing, even in its most traditional form. Like, for instance, the U.S. territories, when you hear countries today saying they have a territory, that's a colony. Puerto Rico is a colony, and they don't have any representation in government. But I wanted to address the point that you made earlier, which made me think about, we were talking about we need to consider who pays, but also we need to be thinking about who stands to benefit from all of this. So when we're talking about things like technology and the reason why certain kinds of regulations are not put into place. I was speaking with you, I think, earlier about the fact that Facebook, I was doing some research and I found out that Facebook was doing lots of reviews where they were realizing, like, oh my goodness, like people are using our community platforms to radicalize and to, like, ultimately, like, be radicalized to become terrorists. And there's lots of misinformation that's being spread on this platform. And they make the conscious decision not to do anything about it because things that are emotionally, really like stimulating, things that lead to emotional arousal, that's the kind of stuff that gets them engagement. And why would they do anything about it if it's, getting them numbers, right?
So maybe this kind of like reaction to social media is a new form of this kind of new technological empire.
Yeah, I just wanted to bounce off what you said, and like I saw a really good advert, I think it was. You might have seen it, Liana, where you see all these people, and it's an job advertisement, and it's like work for free for all these people, spend hours and hours a day for marketing. You don't get paid. In fact, you pay. And basically, it was your use of social media and doom scrolling is, in its very core, paying the top tech people tons of money. They are making so much money off you, and you're doing it for free. So it's free labor. And I thought that was such an interesting way to look at it.
Some nods over here.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
Why? Why do you agree?
Well, because it seems like, we're in a phase of attention economy. So then, if you take it as a fact, then creating content becomes the most important thing, the product that gains the most attention. And tech platforms have us creating content for free. It's exactly what you were saying. Makes perfect sense. It's just, and I think it's fine as a guilty pleasure. I think what's not fine is people not realizing that they are stuck in this vicious circle of producing content for someone else to profit. And in the end, as a result, we have the reign of sort of tabloid-style media and news, voyeurism, rather than sort of high-quality content.
I mean, is there something we feel on the table? Do we feel like we're being used for free?
Used for free. I guess all the what is that called? Big data. Big data.
Before you go, sorry.
Oh yeah.
Before you go, you're coming back. Okay. But we just have a rule on the Talkaoke table before you leave, and we want a final thought. So if you do need to go, give me a wave, say you're off, and we'll get your final thought from you. But if you're just going to get a drink, get another margarita, come sit back down. There we go. Sorry, we'll come back here.
Oh, sorry. No, I guess big data. I mean, I don't. In fact, the lady speaking over there, it makes me realise in a way, actually, not for the first time, but it comes back to you again in the strengthened way, just how malignant it is. How not malicious, but malignant. A malignant force that they are just making money out of people, doom scrolling or whatever they're doing on the phone. We are just simply guinea pigs. We're just guinea pigs. We're just subjects. we don't have any awareness of the environment that we're moving in. We are moving on into, we already have entered a new age where this kind of thing, this thing is going on. Big data is being mined and used for not necessarily malicious intent, but it's made for making money, and it can be used for malicious intent.
And I do agree. I do think we've entered a new age, and I think it's happened without our really noticing. But you know, you just walk out on the street, you'll see most people are walking along looking at their phones. They're captured, and that includes me. I've got to say, I left my phone at home accidentally today, which has been quite liberating. But I think we're captured. But as much as I think it is the tech company's responsibility, I think we as well have to find a way to kind of defeat it, to kind of move on. And I don't think of all I've heard in the last few sessions and listening to people all the time, I don't think we necessarily have that strategy or that idea about how to actually move forward from this technological slavery.
So I just want to take out a second to remind everyone to come back tomorrow, because we're going to be talking about algorithms and why your algorithm is toxic. And speaking of toxic algorithms, I find it really interesting. I was looking at a Mozilla report where basically they were talking about, I think they called it YouTube regrets, because they said that like the vast majority of people who are going onto YouTube, like their experience on YouTube is ending up in regrets, meaning that you'll go on YouTube looking for one thing, and then you'll get a bunch of recommendations through the algorithm, and then you find yourself looking at something very different. So you'll start out looking for something that's quite, innocent, like one little girl, like one mom said that her 9-year-old daughter was looking at, like ballerina videos. Next thing you know, the rabbit hole takes her to videos that gave her an eating disorder. And yeah, they gave her an eating disorder because it was talking about having the right body, and then it's one thing leads to the next. Lots of people have been radicalized this way and have become conspiracy theories through these kinds of algorithms. And when YouTube's been asked for a comment on this, they're very opaque. They're not willing to really talk about what goes on inside that black box. And so I think that's quite malicious, as we were saying before, in my opinion. And it keeps you online. It makes you keep scrolling.
We've got a new face at the table. What's your name?
Sheena.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, I was talking to a friend about a similar conversation, and we sort of kind of agreed that the sort of peak of technology was probably in the late noughties, because you sort of had phones coming out, but they weren't designed to capture your attention. They sort of have useful purposes. I don't know if I'm looking at it with rose-tinted glasses, but it seemed like everything had a functional purpose, and it was designed to uplift your life, whereas now it's sort of been sort of monetized to draw more and more and mine you for whatever it needs. That was
Okay, a disagreement over here. Or agreement.
I disagree a little bit that technology has really advanced. So in fact, even by the end of the noughties, now 2025, things have changed a lot. I mean, especially artificial intelligence has really changed the game, the whole thing, and it really continues to change things. I mean, the idea that we might have had basic technology and that's useful, that's not bad for people. You could apply that argument to any age. When we had calculators in the 70s and the 80s, and then people argued that calculators are bad for people, other people argued that calculators are good, we learn new skills and so on. I would say that at any age, you can argue that. Whereas in fact, I'd say it's changed a lot since the early noughties. 15 years later, things have changed a lot.
And are we worried about this change?
Well, I guess I've got a question. Are we actually living at the cusp of a new industrial revolution? Is that what we're going through? And so these frictions that we see are simply because there is a paradigm shift and things are going to work differently in the future. But this is not something that humanity hasn't gone through. It's just I feel like the stakes are so much higher when you have technologies that are so powerful, like AI, that can actually destroy us all. But I think this wariness towards new technologies has probably always been present, and and then the other thing that I wanted to comment on was the point that you made about sort of big data being harnessed and the use of it. And I find it really, it's something that I've just thought about, but I find it really fascinating how in our life we've got lots of choices about how we spend our capital, right? We can decide to bank with a certain banking institution because they don't found fossil fuels, that sort of stuff. But I actually have no control about how my data is used. I can opt in or I can opt out, but I've got no idea who is buying that data, what they're using it for, and what the purposes are. And I think that's something that might need to change in the future.
So it's not just if your data's being used, but how it's used. You have control over that. Are we in a new industrial revolution? I've got a new point over here.
Sorry, I missed the original provocation, but to the point of a new industrial revolution, I feel like why this feels slightly different is that it is the first paradigm shift that is going to be asking an entire population to reskill en masse. So we're now looking at redefining our purpose as humans, which is fundamentally different to before. Obviously, the utopian view of that is amazing. We can all then follow our passions and do good for society. But the capitalist world that we live in means that takes you closer to communism, and we all know that people don't like that. So I think, potentially it could be an opportunity, but we really need to redefine what our purpose is as well.
Okay, I like it. So redefine our purpose. There was a bit of
What was the point that somebody was making? I was going to bounce off someone else. I think they were talking about how we've had each different rounds of technology have created different rounds of issues every time. And I do think about this thing about my grandparents, when my grandmother didn't have a calculator at school, and now we've got AI. But I think the difference between social media algorithms when it comes to misinformation is, and she talked about it earlier, but she didn't quite explain it, which is that in the old propaganda previously passed from person to person and through networks. Now it goes beyond networks. So if something is getting attention, they will escalate and get bounced completely somewhere different that's not connected to your network. So it's not network to network anymore. It's absolutely algorithmically much more exaggerated than that, and that's why it's so damaging, because you don't get that natural slowing when things are passed person to person, and you have a natural barrier with your family or friends or communities who help to regulate information. You don't have that with the algorithms. People are on the computer on their own, and it's being exponentially passed to somebody, and it'll pop up out of nowhere. Like you said, I was watching videos about something else, and then I was getting recommended all these horror stories of children's murders, and I was like, I don't want to watch that. It was awful. Anyway, that was my point. That's why it's so much more dangerous now.
We've got a new face at the table. What's your name?
My name's Robin. Hi.
Welcome, Robin. And I had a point over here.
I'm just gonna go.
There we go.
This was awesome. This should happen in every town square. The people just sit around and discuss like this, and an open and safe setting. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed that.
Excellent final thought. No, you can throw your thoughts in. I think we might be doing final thoughts. Final thoughts from the whole table. So I'm going to go here first. We've been talking about technology as a new empire. We've been talking about toxicity in ourselves and our family. We've been talking about propaganda.
Final thoughts. Still now, people mostly trust their families, and I think we all have to just take a step. Always look on the other side, always try and get different sources of information, talk, and do exactly what we're doing right now at this table. Talk to many different people. Not break your circle of trust sometimes.
Final thought. It's a rule of the Talkaoke table.
On what, propaganda?
On anything that we talk about tonight.
I missed all of it, but I just think...
No, you got
Yeah, you know, this is a room of really smart people, but it's just really trying to be hyper vigilant and always check yourselves that none of us cannot fall foul of our critical thought slipping, and it's a muscle we need to exercise like any other.
Thank you very much. Lindsay, I'm going to let you lead the kind of round of final thoughts. We are going to do sort of a wrap around everyone's final thoughts. You've been here the longest, so I think perhaps you'll have the most nuanced one. You said some fantastic things tonight, or it could just be something completely left field. It's in your control.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit more left field because Aoife said something that I really wanted to respond to, is that we really need to be questioning where do we get a lot of our beliefs and values from. I remember I took an ethics class when I was in high school, and it was really interesting because when people were asked, oh, where did you get that belief from? People would say, oh, from my dad, because my dad said so. And we said, okay, where'd your dad get that? Oh, we got it from this news station. And so I think, you know, I understand that we very much respect. It's wonderful to respect our elders and to, you know, we have the people that we look up to in our lives. We definitely should, you know, kind of expand our resources, like our sources that we look to. I'm from America, so Americans, I encourage us to read things from, for instance, Al Jazeera. Or to, you know, talk to people beyond just our families, and to challenge ourselves a bit more, and to always ask, if you really have that belief that you will not budge on, where'd you get it from?
You don't budge on. Final thought.
Final thought. I don't know. I think I need to try and get offline a bit more. It's just really difficult, and I don't know how to do it. And I guess I always, I mean, I'm quite naturally good at second guessing myself, and I think I've found it quite helpful to like sort of critically evaluate whatever I'm thinking about, and then bounce loads of ideas off loads of other people, and then use that to try and make up my mind, which I never do. That's not a very good final thought to end on, sorry.
No, it's nuanced, it's got perspective, it's what we love to hear at the Talkaoke. Final thoughts. I know you kind of gave final thoughts earlier.
I like meeting people who I not normally meet. Yeah, that's what I like.
In real life or online?
In real life.
In real life. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I like it. Succinct. That's what we like to hear.
I hugely enjoyed the whole experience. I like the talk at the Intelligence Squared. It was very relevant to some parts of my life and people I know. And yeah, it was just great. It's great. And I concur with gentlemen. It's people you don't usually meet and be in close confines with and actually talk to them. So yeah, great stuff.
Now I know you've had a slightly compressed Talkaoke experience, but do you have any final thoughts from what you've heard?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this evening. I think one of the things I've been... Sorry? I would tell you Act 1. The Act 1 was brilliant. I think one thing I've been thinking about, and this thing about misinformation, I think that information is good up until a point, and obviously we need good information to make a judgment. But the other thing we really need to make a judgment is values, and I think reflecting on what they are, and actually, and I'm not religious, but making a decision of faith about what you think people are like, and that people are universally entitled to rights, to empathy, to love and to security, and remembering that that is a kind of universal human experience. So as much information as there can be, and we need those to make good decisions, but we also need to hold out to those values about what makes us human, and that's a universal experience.
Fantastic. I think you might have already heard, you've got a round of applause, you've got some clicks. Fantastic final thought. Final thoughts from this side of the table.
Gosh, I think we have the illusion of choice, and currently online, what's disguised as meritocracy is just another form of capitalism.
Oh, I so agree with that.
And we need to we're responsible for staying educated and educating other people around us very openly as well.
Hot take. The table loved it.
Well, okay, yeah, I was just reflecting about this whole evening, and I was thinking that often social media doesn't really embrace weirdness. And when I say weirdness, I don't mean things that are like, you know, bad weird, but like good weird. So, for example, strange shows, strange people, strange artists. Social media does not embrace that at all. And I think that what we saw tonight was a celebration of weirdness in the best possible way. Weird artists, weird birds,
And well, yeah, there's no such thing as birds. And I think that in a world where most of the people who sort of like who run media and who run are often very, very afraid of weird, well, let's all be weird together.
Final thought from Margot, Mikey.
I'd like to see politicians wear animal masks.
Keeping it weird. A final thought from over here, our fantastic first act.
I want to hear you all say yes, doctor, in a husky voice.
Oh, fantastic. An excellent final thought, an interactive final thought. Isn't that keeping that? Well, I'm going to go to Mikey first and then me.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it's... Yeah, I've kind of got to agree with everybody. That's what we do at a wedding anyway. But, I just think it's a creative practice. It's an ongoing thing. And it just keeps happening that we've got to come up with new ideas and new ways to actually be more real as people are being more fake.
Thank you very much. And I know you guys were at the heart of the table earlier. Did you want to add any final thoughts before we close the Talkaoke table down? You guys all said some fantastic things.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Genuinely very good. I like it a lot.
Perfect. Any final thoughts?
No.
You might. I don't know.
No, just no. Thank you. It was really good. It was. I don't know where that man went. That other man, but it was actually good to practice what we've been talking about. Having somebody, because we were all disagreeing with each other. So having this person come was.
I was like, wow, it's the theme.
It's
like,
the theme.
we get to practice.
We get to practice in real life.
Yeah.
I was like, is he a plant?
Who dropped him in
Did
there?
they plant him?
That must have been a fix. Yeah, I know. Was that a fix?
But then afterwards he came up to me. He's like, my wife is Pakistani, and I was like,
Well, I think we'll fill you in on all the details later. But if you enjoyed this, come and follow us, grab a card, come back tomorrow. We've got another event tomorrow here at the Pleasance. We're also the People Speak by Talkaoke. I've been Evie, we've got Mikey, we've got Margot, we've got Pam, we've got Helena, we've got you, fantastic lot. Have a wonderful night. Thank you very much.